to Germany, then you can talk German.
No, we won't take this to Germany, but you can talk some German on here if you want to. This is Katie Heinze. It's March 7th,
No,
19.
no, no.
February 7th.
February.
What?
February.
Oh, it's February 7th, 1993. And we're going to talk to Ma about her life and her history and what she remembers about the family and about her ancestors and her relatives and the tough times of the 30s and anything else that comes in. So let's start with.
You were going to say that the Heinzes meant craftsmen. Heinzes meant craftsmen.
Oh, the name Heinze means craftsman in German. And so I don't know how that's important here, but that's said anyway. Why don't you start telling us about where you were born and what you remember about your first years as a kid?
Well, I was born in South Dakota. I don't remember anything from there. I just know that we didn't have a crop for 4 years, and then we moved way there
You
barefoot.
can speak a little louder because it won't pick it up too well.
We lived there 4 years, and then we moved to Madison with, I don't know, we took the furniture along. I don't know if we took,
You don't remember anything. You were probably, what, 2, 3, 4 years old when you moved?
I was around 2.
Oh.
But I remember when Joe was born, that I remember. I remember the doctor came to the house, and I remember too, I think they baptized him at the house. A priest came. That I remember.
That was 1914 or 13?
14.
14.
And,
What do you remember about school?
well, I went to Madison to school for about 5 or 6 weeks. Our horse, we drove a couple weeks, and then a big tractor came on the road, and the horse got afraid. They'd run down the ditch and got all cut up, and the buggy was broke. And after that, we had to walk 7 miles. We was on the road every morning, 6 o'clock. And the priest said to my mother there was no family who was more regular in church than we was and on time.
And how far did you live from church or town?
7 miles.
Oh, the church and school were both in town.
Was a Catholic school. The Norwegians called us Cadas Slickers, so we didn't go to Norwegian school. They went there 1 or 2 years, and then they walked to St. Michael's School. And we'd be early enough. There was I don't remember what her name was. She worked in the telephone office in Madison. She always give us a ride if we was at their place when she was ready to go.
You remember when you got your first car? I mean, when you were a kid.
Yeah,
what year?
Must have been about 1917. My dad could never drive a car decent. He'd start it up, he'd go through around the corners and through chuck holes, and we'd fly up to the... And he didn't know how to drive a car. He didn't drive it very much.
Was it a new one when he bought it or not?
No, Grandpa Friedman bought it for him. He didn't like that we always drove with horses when he came. And he bought him for $1,000 interstate.
It wasn't interstate.
And then some neighbor borrowed it, and after it came back, it never worked anymore. Then it stood outside, covered with an old canvas. Winter and summer, they took the battery in the house and I guess put it in the basement. Anyhow, we never started the car. When we moved away, we left it there. Now, I don't know what they ever done with it, but we didn't move it along.
What year did you move to St. Martin?
1919, beginning of October.
And you lived there for 10 years, you left there in 29.
Yeah. October 8th, we arrived in St. Martin.
What was the reason for moving?
He didn't like, we lived amongst all non-Catholics, and he didn't want to live there the rest of his life. Ma liked it there, and she would have liked to move to Iowa, but Grandpa Friedman bought a farm by St. Martin, 400 acres, I guess, or 320 acres, whatever it was. And then, well, we had pretty good crops there, but we just didn't make ends meet. We couldn't make the payments. He didn't have many cattle, and we wasn't equipped to make the big payments. I don't know what he paid for the farm either. But then when we moved from St. Martin to Rosa, Grandpa Friedman gave him out 80 acres down by the river. And then he just gave it to her so that they didn't have to fool with it. It was mostly trees and and little hay meadow and I think about 13 acres under plow.
That was in Madison.
No, in St. Martin.
What do you remember about school in St. Martin? You said you went 1 year or so in Madison?
Oh, no, only about 5 or 6 weeks in Madison. That was in the spring, and then in the fall I didn't go at all. We moved in October, but I didn't start school in Madison.
Well, what do you remember about the District 125 down at St. Martin?
Well, when we got there, the teacher put me right with the other kids. It took me a couple years before I caught on. The others was...
You were younger than they were, or you just were same age but didn't have as much schooling?
Yeah, I didn't have no schooling, but he just stuck you in there and rolled along. If you didn't know it, then you got a good one over your shoulders or your hands. He made you learn.
Well, how many teachers did you have?
Just one. We
Ed
had...
Leinster was the only teacher you had.
Yeah.
Tell us about him.
He was a good teacher, and he was very strict, but he made the kids obey, and there was nobody who sassed him. They had to take orders, or they'd get it, and he wasn't afraid. He even once gave my brother a good lick, and he tied him on the bench. 2 boys and him, I don't remember, Ed Wolfenkuhl, and I don't know who the other, put him on a bench, and he went out and he got a plum whip. Boy, they got it. We waited in the pasture. We wouldn't tell our parents. They never found it out. After that, the kids all behaved better.
What were your favorite subjects in school, and which was the hardest?
Well, spelling and arithmetic was my favorite, and geography I liked.
Well, you still know spelling pretty well, and your handwriting's still real good too.
Well, penmanship I wasn't crazy about, and I didn't practice. Pete and Mary Jane, they can write much better than I can. They had the same. Mary Jane, I know she had Leinster, but Pete had Leinster.
Well, how many years did you go to school in St. Martin?
5.
5.
I started with 8 and I quit when I was 12. At the spring when I was 12, I went to school.
What did you do after you were through school or quit school? What did you do until...
well, there was plenty to do at home. We had to wash clothes on a board and carry water in and milk cows, and we always had about an acre garden. There was plenty to do. Patch overalls and scrub the wooden floors with a scrub brush and bar of soap. There was no spare time.
Why don't you tell us about your brothers and sisters and the rest of the Odenbretts in your family, and then we'll go to uncles and aunts after that.
Well,
starting with Matt. And
Matt, he worked at home, I don't know, till he was maybe around, I don't know, 20 years old. After Jake was out of school, I don't know, Jake went 40 days to school. That's all that you had to go when you was a certain age. He went to school, I think, till he was about 16, 40 days a year. And Matt and Annie didn't go to school in St. Martin. George died. He never went to school. I don't know if he graduated in Madison. I don't know. But I have books yet from Madison, the Bible history and I think a German book.
Tell us about the others now, Matt and George. And
well,
what do you remember about George? He was 16 when he died, or?
Yeah, I just remember that he had real black hair and he was kind of curly. That's about all I can remember.
Well, what did he die from?
Well, we had the pox. I know it was a smallpox, all of them. The day before I brought lunch out, he was just tired. That was me. He didn't go to church that day. He didn't feel good. And we came home. He laid outside. We had the house bankrupt. He laid outside there in the sun. We'd come home, I'd say, about 12:30 or 1 o'clock with the buggies, we drove. Then we had dinner. Ma was home too. And then we ate dinner, and then they had planned they was going to go spearing fish down by the river. The river was half a mile from the house, down in the pasture. Then they got up. First Dad got up, and then Matt, there was a bench. There were 4 boys. Matt and George and Jake and John sat on the bench. Then Joe and Pete and Annie and I, and then Bill and Ma, and Mary Jane wasn't born yet. And when George got up and walked out, he fell over and he went and convulsed, and he got real purple in his face. And he stayed that way till he died. Then they called the doctor. They couldn't get a doctor, so it took till about 8:30 at night when the doctor came. Then he said they should get the priest. And the St. Martin priest wasn't home. We had no telephone. They had I guess Roush, that was our neighbors. They went and called for the doctor and the priest. And then they got the farming priest and the Richmond doctor. The farming priest came, I guess, about 11 o'clock at night. And the doctor came around 8:30 with a nurse, a horse and buggy, I guess he had. And then he, I don't know what he said. I wasn't in the room, but he told him he wasn't going to live. Then they got the priest, and when the priest gave him communion, or he anointed him and that, and then he opened his eyes, he knew what was going on, but he couldn't talk. His tongue, he had lockjaw. Tongue was real thick and blue. They thought it was some after effect from the pox.
And when he died, at the night, during the night?
About 1:30 at night, Friday morning.
Or just shortly after the priest got there?
Yeah, the priest was there around 11 o'clock, and about 1:30 he died. And then they kept him at home. Mrs. Roush came, and my dad, I guess, they cleaned him up and put him in a coffin. Then they put tubs with ice underneath the coffin and fruit jars with ice in the coffin. That was on a Friday, and then on a Sunday they had to bury him because he got real, his face got big, and the priest said he was going to bury him on a Sunday afternoon. Then they had a requiem mass a different day. They took him in church and had service, but not a requiem. They said they couldn't have a requiem. I don't know why, on a Sunday.
What about Jake and John?
Annie was next to
Annie, yeah.
George. She tried to go to school, and she went to school, and she was born in Iowa, and then we lived in South Dakota, and then first they went to the Norwegian school, and they didn't like it there. The kids always poked fun about them. And then they went to the sister school, and that was better. I guess they all was pretty bright. I think George graduated, I think. And Matt, I can't remember Matt going to school because he always said he never had an education. I don't know. But George, I remember going to school, and Annie and Jake and John, then four used to go. And then later on I went, just for about 5 or 6 weeks I went. That was from about after Easter till school was out about in May. I don't know just when it was it first part of June. I don't know. Anyhow, we walked 6 o'clock in the morning. We was on the road, and it was always about 6 o'clock at night when we got home. We had all our lunch in one pail. We had syrup bread in a syrup pail. That's what we all ate on a big table. There was about 3 tables in the school, and they could, the families sat together because most of them shared a pail. That wasn't like today, I want this, I want that. They all, wasn't much difference. They all had the same. I remember that when I went to El Rosa School, to St. Martin School, one family, they came to school, they had all bread in their pail and then cream poured on.
Oh boy.
And then they ate that. That's all they had. And then sometimes they came, each one had a little chicken, maybe 6-week-old chick, fried nice and brown. That's all they had, half a chicken for their dinner. It was Hen Stowe and Mrs. Melvin there. They had 14 kids. And Jake, he went to school, as long as I know, only 40 days in the winter. See, I was 8 years old, and Annie must have been 13 years old, or 14, 13. And they didn't have no books for her, so she never went to school in St. Martin. But Jake went, and Johnny, he graduated. I give him the picture. There was 8 kids graduated with him. And Johnny was always smart. He was bright. And Joe was, he passed the 8th grade. No, he didn't pass the 8th grade. But when he went in the army, he became first he was I don't know how long it took before he was more than just a buck private, but later on he was a sergeant and then a first lieutenant and second lieutenant, and he was in there I think about 20 or 21 years in the service. And Pete, he was born with a pencil in his mouth. He was always smart. He could read already before he ever went to school, read, and he knew the ABCs just like Mike. He knew everything. And Bill, I don't know, he wasn't so smart. When he was about, I'd say about 4 years old, he went up in the hay barn and we had such 42 to hay down in 14 square chutes. They was open on, one was open here, the other one a little higher, and the other one a little lower. And he fell down there, that was 37 feet down. He was knocked unconscious.
Was that in St. Martin?
Nobody knew where he was, and then all at once he came in the house. He looked as white as a sheet, and his hair was dirty, and then they asked him where he was, and first he didn't say nothing. Then he said he fell down the Haber, and then in the evening he showed. Fell down there. He must have been knocked out for a couple hours. So he didn't learn as good. Mary Jane, she was real good in school too. And then, one year, he must have been about 6 years old. We had trash, and then trash machine went away, and he went on top of the straw pile. There was a hay shed under there, and he must have slipped down there. We looked all night for him, and then around 11 o'clock at night, he came walking in the house, all full of...
Was that Bill?
Bill, yeah, he was about 6 years old.
He's sort of a mischief guy. He got into trouble with little things.
Yeah.
What do you remember about your dad and mom and how they raised the kids?
Oh, my dad was awful strict. My mom she never hardly spanked us. She sometimes would take the run after us, and then we'd get away from her. But my dad, he'd catch us, and the boys, they all got tied on a chair, and they got a whipping till put the pants down. He whipped them till the blood came. I remember that. In Madison, I remember when he done that. Annie got it too. I never got it that way, but I once got a spanking. I and Joe, we didn't go to school yet. There was a way on the other side of the slough, about a half a mile or 3/4 mile from the house, towards Sterling. There was a big swarm of bees, and my dad had seen that go down on a post. And he went there with a bed sheet and a wash boiler, and I and Joe ran ahead, and then Joe threw some stones on there. And then the bees flew up, and oh, he was mad. He found a board and that had a nail, and he hit me a good one. I was bleeding when I got home, so my ma had to take liniment and wash it off. It healed out, it didn't kill me. And Ma was always good. I know in St. Martin, that was in Madison. In St. Martin, he whenever the kids done something, he took anything what come in the way, and he threw it at him or hit him with a broomstick or anything. He was awful mean with the kids.
What do you remember about your first job away from home?
Well, I only ever worked out where he had babies. My first job was by John Lauba. That was their 4th baby. And then after that I worked for Joe. I worked, I think, on about 20 places where he had babies. That was different than it's now. You had to wash out all the bloody clothes, wash them and rub them on the board and wash them again till you had all the blood out, and then boil them and then wash them again and sterilize them, iron them. They didn't have Kotex at that. I washed many a tub full of them. And the diapers you had to wash out in a pail of water. Most people, they soaked them from a whole week and they smelled so awful. When I got married, I washed my diapers out every day. I never left them sit a whole week that they smelled that you could hardly stand it.
What did you earn working for families that had babies at that time?
$2 a week.
$2 a week.
Yeah, and then you had to carry the water in and carry it out. wash clothes on a board or stump them and then boil them and hang them
Did
out.
you also help outside with
Yeah.
barn chores?
I always helped milk. And one place I worked, I had a manure out the barn. He was gone in the cities. His wife was in the hospital. He was a trucker. Once he was gone 9 days.
Who was that?
John Love.
Oh.
He lived where Joe Failing lived in. Then I had a manure out the barn and feed the sheep and the horses. They could go in and out of the barn. Then Bill came over and he watered. He pumped the water with an engine. Otherwise, I fed the pigs and the sheep and cows, everything.
What did that $2 a week buy you? What did you spend it on?
Well, not a heck of a lot. You could buy a pair of shoes for $2, $1.49, $2. I never had fancy shoes, but just average shoes you could
Well, about how old were you when you first started these jobs?
buy. What, 1920?
Oh.
So when you were a little kid though, what kind of games or what kind of things did you do when you were a little kid? Can you remember any of the things you played?
We played hide and go seek and ante over. That's about all. We didn't have no games or.
Did you have any dolls or?
No, we never had dolls. My sister once got a doll and then the boys broke it and Dad gave him such a lick and he tied him on a chair. So we never got any dolls after that. I never had a doll that I can remember. We never had toys. Except Johnny got toys from Cashmere's. They was his sponsors. I remember he once got a little bowling alley and marbles and I guess everybody played with that. It didn't take long, it was worn out. You know, you'd shoot them, they'd flip over. They didn't work anymore.
So who were your sponsors then?
Grandma Friedman and Jake Odenbrett.
How far from home were you before you came to Rosa? Well, I know you were born in South Dakota, lived in Madison, and then moved to St. Martin. But once you got to St. Martin, where's the furthest you ever traveled to?
Well, we never, to St. Martin and Spring Hill, that's all. Once I can remember, we went to New Munich on a church bazaar.
You never was to St. Cloud?
Never. The first time I was in St. Cloud was when we got married. I went with Lovux once in the summer, and then we went there to get our marriage license and wedding clothes. Never was to St. Cloud otherwise. I never was, we didn't go no place. We had a car, but we didn't go places. I still don't go much. I got used to from little on staying at home, and it doesn't bother me to stay home.
What about your grandma and grandpa? Can you remember anything about them?
Well, Grandpa Odenbrett, he lived with us the last year, I guess, or almost a year.
Where at El Rosa, you mean?
Yeah, Grandpa Odenbrett. He came from South Dakota. He wasn't satisfied there anymore, and then he came by us. He was 82, and then he was 83. In October, he died. He had prostate problems, and then he had prostate cancer. He died. He was in Belgrade in a hotel a couple weeks, and then he bloated up so big the doctor said he had to take him to St. Cloud and do operation on him, and then they opened him up and it was all cancer. And he lived about 2 days or so, and then he died. And Grandpa Friedman, he used to come every year or maybe twice a year from Iowa. He used to come by St. Martin. He would come and, if there was doors to fix in a barn, or he was kind of handy as a carpenter.
What do you remember about your uncles, both Friedmans and Odenbretts?
I don't remember much of them. Uncle Willie, he came once by us, and we never went no place. We never went to see. One year when Matt got struck by lightning in South Dakota, then I think it was Johnny and my dad and Ma and Mary Jane, they drove with the Model T sedan. They drove as far as Coleman, South Dakota by Uncle Willie. And then I don't know if they stayed there a day or two, and then, or did they go straight to South Dakota, to Hoban, where Matt was, and then,
But you never traveled with them on anything back to
No.
Fulda, Worthington, or South
no,
Dakota?
we never went any place. I know Uncle Pete's boys, they said, how come we never visit them? I said, well, we never went no place. My dad wasn't a driver. He couldn't drive a car decent. Would have been dangerous for him to drive. And then later on, when the boys was bigger, I don't know, he just didn't. When they went to South Dakota that time, I don't know what went wrong with the car, and then they blew out tires. They had those little tires. I don't know, they went to South Dakota once, and that was the end of it. Then they never went to Iowa. My ma was once in Iowa after, that was for the golden wedding. That was, I figured it up, I was 14 years old. Pete said it was,
You can keep asking questions, I'm just gonna move the camera angle.
Pete said,
Well, we're back in business. We're talking about the uncles, I think, and,
well, I'll start in with the Friedmans because I know more about them. Uncle Jake Friedman, he used to come up a couple times when we lived by St. Martin. Cecil was first gonna go to St. John's to become a priest, but then he went to Worthington, Ohio, I thought. No, to Maryland someplace. I don't know what town he was, but he went to Maryland. And usually Uncle Jake would come with the kids. Aunt Katie usually stayed home to milk the cows, she and Joseph. But Lillian didn't come along, but Veronica and Raymond and Father Cecil, he was a young boy then they came. Then I think we went with him once to St. John's, if I remember right. And I know Aunt Annie and Uncle John, they came by us too when they went, before they moved to Oregon.
was that Annie and John Schneider?
Yeah, she's 104 years old.
Is she still living as of this
Yeah.
day?
Yeah, but she broke her hip and now she's almost blind and she can't hear at all. She had a stroke last fall, so she can't communicate with people anymore. But she's in the nursing home now. And her daughter, the oldest one, her husband had a stroke about 2 or 3 years ago. He's in a nursing home too. He's completely helpless. And Marie died. That's her second sister, and Esther. They're both dead already. And Albert, he died too about 2 years ago. That's only Milo and Irene left from the Schneider family.
And how many kids did she have?
5. And Aunt Julia died 2 years ago, and Uncle John died about 6 months before she did. He died in San Francisco by his daughter. He lived in a trailer house.
Well, he didn't live with her the last years?
No, he was 96 or 97, and she was 94, Aunt Julia. She was married, but her husband died, I guess. They was only married a year or something. She was 37 years old when she got married. And Uncle John, his wife left him. She went to New York, so he was a bachelor most of his life. They had
Uncle John Friedman.
they had a daughter, was 11 years old when they separated. And I think he took care of her mostly. Anyhow, he lived close by her, right alongside of her when he died. And Father Joe, he was a priest only 8 years when
You had an uncle who was a priest, Joe Friedman?
my oldest brother.
And who was Cecil Friedman's dad?
Jake Friedman.
Well, then there was, you had a first cousin and an uncle in the Friedman side who became priests, and you had a cousin, Stephen Odenbrett, that became a priest.
Yeah, and Harlan Creer became a priest, but after a couple of years he left. He's now in Missouri. He married a nun. He, she was a social worker, and then he married her. But
Okay, getting a little closer to home, how did you and Dad meet? A little more recent times.
well, we met the first time on a card party, and then he'd come and I worked for Laubach, and then he'd come and pick me up once in a while to go to a card party or something at church.
Well, had you known him before that? Before you worked for Laubach? Had you known him when you
Yeah.
first moved here in 1929?
Yeah, I knew him.
Had
No,
you-
I didn't know him before we moved here.
Oh, but he knew Jake and John before they moved up here, is that
Yeah,
right?
he worked for Laubach, and then they went fishing. That's how he knew them. My dad once scared him. He shot in the air with a shotgun, and Joe Kleinschmidt knew that it was him, but the others didn't, and they thought it was a
Game
game
ward.
ward.
Ah.
Yeah.
Well, what did you do for dates back then? What do you do? How do you get acquainted, or what do you do for that?
We went to a movie a couple times, and then we'd go. El Rosa used to have card parties. We'd go there. They'd play cards first, and then about 10:30 they'd have a dance till about 1. That's about the only. Then a couple times we went to Spring Hill to dances, wedding dances. Otherwise, I never went to New Munich or Lake Henry or other places to dances.
Okay, you never learned to drive a car. Is that because you didn't want to, or nobody
Well,
asked you to, or?
I could drive the Model T, but I never drove a car. In St. Martin, we drove the car just to, from the neighbor to our place, but I never drove to town. And nobody ever asked me to drive a car. Grandpa Heinze always said the women puff too much gas for not. So that was sign enough that I didn't try. Mrs. Paul Heinze or Mrs. Pete Heinze, they didn't drive cars either, or Mrs. John. He preached that into them, and they all respected that.
What do you remember about the Depression days? When you first married in 1933, it was 21st November. Tell us what it was like moving into a home in the Heinze home. Can you explain a little about that?
Oh, when I was first there, I wished I'd never moved in there because he was crabby, the old man. I didn't like it at first. I had to get used to a lot of things. Everything had to be just the way Grandma done it, and they had hired girls, and, well, Minnie Koski was good, but the other one they didn't like. And
Well, who all was living there when you moved in?
Matt and Henry and Bill and Grandpa, 4 of them.
4 of them.
We moved in there, we bought everything, potatoes and meat and everything what was there was there. So, we didn't need much money. Our first cream check was $17, and we had no eggs or nothing to sell in the winter. And all we lived on was rice and potatoes and oatmeal. And flour, they took wheat to Freeport, and then we had our bread. And otherwise, I didn't buy much gold.
What did Matt and Henry do those days? If they lived there, did they work elsewhere?
Well, whenever they could get a job, Matt worked for Nick Hennon for $5 a month, and then not Nick Hennon. Well, whatever it was, a Hennon. It wasn't Nick, a different one. He come home drunk, and then he and Matt got in an argument, and then Matt come back home. He left his car there. The road was snowed in. He couldn't get his car home. Then he stayed home for a while, and then Bill went and got his car for him. And then he stayed there a while. He'd go by Paul a couple of days, then he didn't like it there, then he'd come back, and then finally I guess his brother Pete wrote him he should come to North Dakota. And then before he went, he said, yeah, he didn't have no underwear, he didn't have this, so he went in the store. Bill told him, well, go and buy underwear. Then he bought himself underwear and shoes and shirts and stockings and whatever he needed. High-top shoes, you could buy them that time for $5 or $6. And he bought almost $18 worth of clothes, and he never told us anything. That was about in the winter. And then next fall we sold our chickens. We raised a lot of chickens, but clucks I raised them, and then we paid off the grocery bill what we couldn't pay with eggs, and then he had a slip there. Well, there's a slip what your brother Matt bought. The date was on when he bought it and everything, and he bought high-top shoes and overalls and underwear and shirts, and you could buy shirts for 49 cents, and I don't know what an overhaul cost, and underwear maybe $1 a piece, and he, then we found out what he all had bought, and Bill told him he could buy just underwear, so he bought what he needed.
What did Henry do? Matt left about what year? Maybe 34?
Yeah, in the spring of 34, maybe, I don't know, just...
And Henry was still there in 1938, I remember. I think that's the year he left.
Well, Henry, he, in the summer months, we paid him $35 a month.
$35 a month, that's quite a bit then.
Well, anyhow, I don't know, the first years, I guess he just got spending money, and then he worked out wherever he could, 50 cents a day, or if it was hard work, $1 a day. He worked out for other people once in a while, not a week at a time, maybe 2 days, and then he'd be home. And if he didn't like it at home, then he'd go up by Paul, and then he'd be just too glad to come back home again. He always said Trace cooked enough for a spider. She didn't cook enough for 2 people.
What do you remember about Grandpa? He lived with us 13 years. I remember when he died, and I was almost 12. But what do you remember about the 30s when you first moved in there?
Well, he could never walk good. The only thing he ever done is when somebody died, a baby died, he made a coffin for $1.50. He went to town, he bought a board. They had to pay what the board cost, and he made a coffin just like the ones you buy. Made them slant and sanded them nice, and I don't know if he painted them. I didn't. His mother used to always paint them. I never painted them. Maybe the people painted themselves. I don't know. I didn't paint them.
Well, what do you remember him talking about Germany?
Well, he always said he'd never go back to Germany because he'd have to go to jail. He dodged the army. He'd never go back to Germany ever, and he never ever mentioned that he had a brother or a sister, or if his dad had brothers and sisters. He never mentioned. He never wanted to talk about Germany much.
What do you remember about Grandma Barnes? My grandma.
Oh, my mother.
Your mother-in-law.
Well, she was dead before we got married.
Yeah, I know, but you remember? Did you know her?
Oh yeah, I knew her. She was only 58 years old, but she looked like 75 or 80 when she died, because she was in St. Cloud Hospital, I know, for a couple months, and then she came home. She was in bed for about 6 more months. Froni Barnes took care of her. She was like a nurse to her. And then they had to learn her how to walk. The doctor came out a lot, Slocum, came out with horse and buggy, and he helped them get her up and made her stand, and then made her make 1 or 2 steps and try her out. So they got her to walk a little. Then she walked with her cane for a long time. And
well, when you got to know her, was she healthy then? She was. I remember I heard that she had set clocks the night before she died. Is that right?
yeah, well, she always had a hired girl who was glad that I was 14 years old. I guess she helped her. I don't know if she helped. Henry helped her, I guess. And I don't know if I don't think she was sick. She had high blood pressure always. Her lips was always blue. She looked much older than she was.
Had you had your wedding date set already before she died? I mean, did she know that you were going to get married and dead at that time or not?
I don't think
you hadn't made plans yet then.
No. Dad said that they had planned on if somebody would get married, then they'd move to town, but I wouldn't know what they'd have lived on. They didn't have no money. They never had any money. He, when Grandma died, he didn't have any money hardly to pay for the funeral. because he couldn't work anymore, and they had, 12 or 13 cows. They didn't bring in a heck of a lot of cream chicken. I don't know, they took wheat to Freeport for flour, and they usually had 2 or 3 brood sows. That wasn't a heck of a lot. They didn't farm big. They just farmed to make ends meet.
Did you can meat during
Yeah,
30s?
I canned meat. Yeah.
What kind of meat?
I canned pork and I canned chicken and I canned beef.
How do you can meat?
Well, you put it in a jar. Now you have to pressure cook it. At that time we cooked it in a jar 3 hours, and it always kept. Put salt and pepper on, a level teaspoon of salt and some pepper in the middle of the jar, on fill half full of meat, and then put salt, level teaspoon of salt on a quart, and then some pepper, and then filled it to the rim, to the about this far from the top, and then put a rubber band on and cook it 3 hours in a jar cover. Keep it boiling for
And
3
it tasted fairly fresh when you...
It tasted real good, just as good as it does now when you pressure can it. I couldn't taste any different. Maybe it was more tender now with a pressure canner. And I canned ribs that way too. I browned some, and some I just put in the jars that way. And sausage we used to fry in the oven, and then put it in 10-gallon crocks, and then pour hot lard on. Then we'd take out what we needed and pour the lard.
I think I remember that. I remember
And
crod
bacon.
lard and borscht.
Yeah, and then we used to fry in the fall, maybe in August or September, butcher a hog, and we'd fry it all down in a crock, put lard on, and then you'd take out as much, put maybe a tablespoon or 2 of water.
And that kept right through the summer.
Yeah, it had to be fried enough. Kept, and it tasted darn good. And it was really a lot cheaper than with the lockers, you know. You butchered at home, and then you...
And it didn't taste any, I mean, it didn't taste old either, I don't recall.
No, it didn't, no. And liver sausage, we fried down that way too, put it in jars and then covered it with lard. Everybody done that. And then later years I fried sausage, and then I put it in fruit jars, and then put about this much lard on and turned it upside down. And then when you'd want to get it out of there, you'd put it in the oven for a little bit, the jar. And then the lard would melt, and take it out and pour a tablespoon or 2 of water on, and then heat it.
You probably didn't can any more meat or sausage after Dave and Dennis were born, did you? After you had the refrigerator, or don't you remember?
No, well, with the refrigerator, that didn't help. When we had a freezer, I didn't. We canned still meat till we had a freezer.
Well, you didn't get a freezer till in the 50s, I think, right?
Yeah, 58 we got our first freezer.
What else you remember about the 30s?
Well, I remember the first year we was married, we had those dust storms. We didn't, it tore all the grain out, the roots and all. It was just black. Sometimes you couldn't hardly see. Real much wind, and tore the whole grain out. Then in June we got rain. Then they replanted a lot of corn and some flax.
That was the year 1934.
Yeah. We didn't trash any oats or barley or wheat. We didn't. I don't think we planted wheat. Oats and barley we usually had. We didn't get any. But we got 95 bushels of flax that year. We planted that later, I think around the 5th of July he planted that. He dug some fields over, and he planted a lot of corn. He had a lot of shredded corn. And because a lot of that land they planted in late corn, and then they shredded it. I think in 35 we built the silo. Then you could have used some of that corn, but we shredded it all. We had the hay barn full, and then piles outside. We fed that to the cattle and horses and sheep.
Okay, what do you remember about 35 when I was born, then Bertha and Art and so on? Just what do you remember special about then?
Well, I remember when you was born, the doctor came early in the morning. It was cold. It was pretty cold. I don't know, maybe 10, 15 below. He came with big fur coat on, and he there, come around 4:30. He was there till about 10 o'clock.
Well, how was he called?
Uh, Bill went down by Infant Roots, that's by the river bridge.
And then he called by telephone from there.
Yeah. And when Bertha was born, well, I was sick 2 weeks before. And then we had a doctor come out, and he didn't know much, was a young doctor. And then he come out a couple times and nothing happened. Then I told him he didn't have to come, but we'd need him, we'd call him. Then it took another 2 weeks yet. And then Bill went in and told Dr. Engstrom, then he gave me pills to take, castor oil and pills. And then I take them the night before, and then by about 11 o'clock I started getting pains, but only one an hour, and then all at once I got 3 pains, one after another, and then she was born before the doctor was there.
Was that Bertha?
Yeah, and then I hemorrhaged so bad. Mrs. Spoden was there then.
Well, you said, or someone said, I was sick as a baby. Is that...
You had a colic, I had breast...
infection?
Yeah, and I shouldn't have given you no milk, and I gave you milk, and that ruined your system. You vomited and cried and cried for about 6 weeks. Then after you had all that poison mastitis out of you, then you was all right. We carried you at
Well,
night.
Bertha was sick too, or she was born light, or what about her?
No, she was 6 pounds. She wasn't sick.
Oh, she wasn't?
No, later on, after she was, I don't know, then she had kidney problems. Whenever she'd wet her diaper, then she'd get blisters, and then we took her to the doctor, and then he gave her medication, and she got better. I'm thinking I'm gonna probably put some...
Time when she,
Now we're back on the screen here. What about Art? What do you remember about him in his 1938?
Well, I had high blood pressure, then the doctor told me I had to go to the hospital. He was born in the house right next to the standard station. They tore it down. That was that lady had 3 women in there who had babies that time. I guess I was about the 4th one who went there.
And Dennis and David, you must have been pretty big when you had them.
They was born in the Hascom house on Main Street. I was there, I went in on Saturdays, and they was born on Tuesdays. I was so full of fluid, my legs and fingers and everything was just stiff. But I hemorrhaged with all of them, with Art I hemorrhaged, and with Dennis and David I hemorrhaged.
Well, if that would have been at home without medical attention, you probably would have bled to death.
Well, Dr. Engstrom was, he just give you a shot and then it stopped. Give you one in each leg and then it stopped. With Bertha, I bled an awful lot. I don't know what the twins, Dr. Engstrom was all full of blood. It just shot out.
Well, you've been sick off and on for most of your married life. What, you still managed to live 81 and going. What are some of the things you had wrong with you?
Well, I was always anemic. I think Dr. Engstrom gave me those vitamin B12 shots. None of them other doctors did, and that's my problem now. I'm getting them, and that's supposed to help me. I don't know if it's really going to help me or not.
Yeah, but you had surgeries for how many different things already?
Yeah, I had different surgeries. The worst surgery I had was when I had my bladder sewn up in Sauk Center, a cystocele. That was the worst surgery. I went through the most then, I think. The colon surgery, that didn't hurt that much because it was inside. I wasn't supposed to lift or anything, but I didn't do much, then it didn't hurt, only when you sat. I tried to always either lay on the side or I laid in bed, it was all right, but you sat on a hard chair, that was hard.
What do you see different today either better or worse in the church than when you were growing up, and say even as far as 30 years ago?
Well, I think it was easier years ago than now. There wasn't as much going on, was much easier than now.
Why do you think that so many people just quit going to church, they lose their faith, and years ago they stuck with it, but was there...
Well, they didn't get around like they do now. Years ago, you went to church, that's about the only place. Once a year, I went to Sauk Center and to Belgrade. I only went when I had to go to the doctor. I didn't go to other places.
So the church was really an important part of every family's life, and everybody went there and
Yeah.
participated. And
Yeah, the people, I think, was much better people then than they're now. I don't know if they was better, but they went to church much better, and they went to confession more and everything. They
What-
only went to confession and then to communion once. They didn't go more.
what knew a lot of priests over the years now, Rose. I remember Father Hirsch, Father Retzik, and then Father Steich and Father Kleckner, and
Father
Well, that-
Schmelzer.
what and why don't you tell us something about those old timers from Father Leitner? You didn't know Father Foos, I guess.
No.
From Father Leitner on, and tell us you worked for him, and tell us about that.
Well, they made everything more strict, and it seems that people obeyed them because they made it though if you didn't do this or done that, you'd go to hell. You never heard people talk the way they do now. Everybody believed to do what the priest told them. There was nothing.
Well, tell us a little bit about the priest, Father Leitner. What was he like?
Oh, he was a real good priest. He was. He made everything sound so strict that if you didn't do what he told you, you'd go to hell, and that's the way people believed. I know Tilly Breitbach once almost went crazy. I don't know for what, but she wouldn't go to confession by him. She went to Belgrade, and then this Father Rauch, he explained everything to her, and then she got better again. And yeah, the people, I think they respected their priests more than they do now.
What about Father Hirsch?
Well, as much as I know, he was a good priest. We never had any.
What do you remember about him? Anything special? He married you, and he also was there when Grandpa died, his funeral.
Yeah, he was, as much as I can say, he was a good priest. I have nothing against him. He was set in his ways.
I remember he used to scold a lot. You remember that?
Well, all them priests years ago scolded more. Father Leitner, he could pound on the pulpit and make really things sound bad. But the people just respect him. Those who didn't, well, they didn't go. When Father Leitner was there, he excommunicated old McKennis and Stephen and two of his daughters because they couldn't pay no pew rent. That wasn't right either. They was so poor. He helped pay for the church, and he helped pay for the hall. He had a picture and paid for a window and all that, and then he got caught cooking moonshine. He was in jail, and then didn't have nothing anymore.
You remember the Latin Mass, and today it's English Mass, the music back then, the music today. What's your feeling on that?
Well, I don't know. I go along the way it is. I don't criticize it. It's good enough for me the way it is.
Who were some of your best friends, either when you were a kid or even when you were first married and then today?
Well, all my neighbors was my friends. But
Do you have anybody who was especially close?
well, Florentine Hens she comes and sees me more than anybody. Marion Emdick and Flo Waltz, well, she died, and Marie Wichman and Mrs. Waring, they still come to see me. Ivor Ryman, once in a while. And here in town, I have a lot of friends.
What do you think makes a good friend? What do you think the qualities are that makes good friends?
Oh, I don't know. If they do what's right and treat you decent, they don't try to think they're more than the next person. That's what I don't like people who are stuck up.
What advice do you give people on raising kids?
Well, they should know what no means, not if they want something, I want it, that I don't believe on. I think kids should learn to obey. Like, there's some kids, they don't know what no means. They beg until they get what they want, or they buck. There's a lot
What
of,
about discipline? You think discipline should be hard or should be light or?
oh, you can raise kids without spanking 'em. I've seen that works real good. I know already some kids, I thought if they'd be mine, I'd spank the shit out of them, but after they are a little bigger, they know what's right and wrong.
Well, you think as a general rule, would you advise to raise kids without spanking or to use spank once in a while?
Oh, I think if I would have to raise kids, they would get spanked once in a while till they know. I didn't spank a lot, but if you give them a good one when they got it coming, so it bites, they'll remember that. Not spank them for every little bit. I don't believe in that. But if they know what a spanking means, I know Dennis and David, and I think all of my kids, they got spanked. They knew when I said I'll get the strap, they behaved.
I remember one particular time you came upstairs and I got one.
I don't know if you was, I know I had Dennis
Oh,
and
yeah, I
Art.
remember. It happened that time I peed on the windowsill, ran down. You guys were eating breakfast.
Oh, I don't
Remember that? I remember that.
I don't know.
Yeah, from upstairs down and ran down the wall and on past the window.
Maybe Dad got
And you
that.
came upstairs and whoom whoom.
Well, then you had it coming too.
Yeah,
You bet you never done it again.
no.
I know.
How would you advise young people getting married? What does it take to stay together instead of split and divorce and have lots of problems?
I don't know. They have to know that themselves. We always, by us, Bill was always the boss. I always done what he wanted, and that's the way I lived. That's the way my folks was, and that's the way I figured it was. Years ago, they always said the man was the boss. Nowadays, it isn't that way anymore.
What's been your biggest satisfaction in life, and what has been your biggest disappointment? Can you think of one or the other, or both, or maybe several?
I don't know.
Well, I think your satisfaction is your kids. Your kids have all turned out really well, so evidently you raised your kids really well.
Oh, Dad helped too. He was more stricter. When he said something, they knew that was no. There was no ifs and buts about begging. He usually put down the laws. He was more stricter than I did.
Anything particular that disappointed you or that was very difficult?
Oh, there was ups and downs, but I usually kept them to myself. I didn't argue much. I wish often I would have told him what was different, but I never said nothing.
Any other questions?
What about when Grandpa lived there with the kids? His relationship with the kids?
Oh, he was pretty crabby with the kids, although I don't think he meant it that way, but Leo can remember that when he'd get you with his cane around the neck. You can remember that, can't he? He'd pinch in your ear and then pull him. Would you remember that?
I don't remember the ear pinching. I remember catching the necks with the cane. And the Heinzes have a reputation of being sort of gruff and cold. Paul has a little bit of that, and Grandpa had a lot of that. David has some of that. I can act that way. I do quite often. So there is a tendency to sound like we're hard and tough. So.
Oh, David is, he's awful straight out with everything. He's pretty grouchy sometimes. But Carol isn't afraid of him. She just tells him what she thinks is.
Well, I
So-
guess.
I'm going to turn the potatoes down and cook it.
Well, I was going to ask you if you wanted to share anything else, like about your faith or anything that you wanted to share to pass
Well,
on.
we lived 5 miles from St. Martin. We went I only went to catechism one whole year. We had to walk to town every day. And I made my first communion when I was the 23rd of September. I was 11 years old, and then in October 7 I made my confirmation, and after that I didn't have to go to religion.
Yeah, but you had religious instructions in school, didn't you?
Yeah, every day. Or
Anyway,
couple
I
times
remember
a
you
week.
teaching us, you knew more than many of the teachers I know today, it seems like, anyway. What you
Well,
taught us was pretty straightforward and solid.
well, Leinster was our teacher. He was a good teacher. My dad helped me. I went to confession before all the other kids because I was 11 years old. And our priest had broke his arm. He didn't have communion the year I was supposed to go. And then I was 11 years old, or 10 years old, and then October 11, when I made my communion, I was 10, and then I was 11, the 5th October, and the 7th I went to communion. No, got confirmed. And I was the only one who was to confession. And the priest asked me, who helped me? I said, my dad. And then he never asked any more questions, because he was a good friend of us. He always got feed by us for his chickens. And he was Father Eugene. He was a nice priest.
Did you have any devotions at home, or did you say the rosary, or?
We said the rosary. We didn't. Well, when we didn't go to church, my dad would read the Bible, but we never had devotions.
You said the rosary?
Yeah,
At
we
home?
said the rosary.
Was that every day or just during Lent? Or?
During Lent. And when we didn't get to church, like there was a snowstorm in Madison, or I don't know if St. Martin if we got to church all, but in Madison I know sometimes we didn't get to church, then we prayed the rosary. I still do that if I don't.
Was there anything in your home, like did you have statues, or do you remember any of the furnishings of your home that
We
you
never
remember?
we had Sacred Heart, Immaculate Heart of Mary pictures,
Okay.
but we never had any statues or anything like that.
Mm-hmm.
We
Okay.
couldn't afford that stuff.
Uh-huh. So did you feel, when you grew up, your home was a pretty happy home, or did you think your dad was too strict, and he did drink, didn't he?
Yeah, he drank, he'd come home drunk sometimes, and then he beat up my mother. We didn't think too much of him sometimes, although then when he was better again, then he was okay. And my mother was much easier going, and she always worked hard.
Well, you've always worked hard during your life, too.
Well, I think she worked harder. I know she used to sew till, she sewed all the clothes for us kids, shirts for my dad and for all the boys and all that, Sunday shirts and school shirts and everything. She just bought overalls.
But you did that, too. You sewed
Yeah.
a lot of the clothes. You kind of...
Well, I didn't have as many to sew for. She had 7 boys, and well, George died, then it was 6 boys and 3 girls. She always done all the sewing. And then we got clothes from other people. She done, she made them over.
Yeah, you did that, too, didn't you?
Yeah.
Okay. You made over things, too, you
Yeah.
said. Yeah.